Of the House of Commons Standing Committee on the Status of Women. Today's meeting is taking place in hybrid format, pursuant to the House Order of June 23rd, 2022. Members are attending in person in the room and remotely using the Zoom application. I would like to make a few comments for the benefits of the witnesses and members. Please wait until I recognize you by name before speaking. For those participating by video conference, click on the microphone icon to activate your mic, and please mute yourself when you are not speaking. Interpretation for those on Zoom, you have the choice at the bottom of your screen of either floor, English, or French. For those in the room, you can use your earpiece and select the proper channel. I remind that all comments should be addressed through the chair. For members in the room, if you wish to speak, please raise your hand. For those on Zoom, please use the raise hand function. In accordance with the committee's routine proceedings concerning connection tests, I'm informing you that the committee, everybody has been tested and all is well. Going on to our study. Pursuant to Standing Order 1082 and the motion adopted on Tuesday, February 1st, 2022, the committee will resume its study in human trafficking of women and girls and gender diverse people. Before we welcome our witnesses, I would like to provide this trigger warning. This will be a difficult study. We'll be discussing experiences related to abuse. This may be triggering to viewers, members, or staff with similar experiences. If you feel distressed or if you need help, please advise the clerk. So I would like to now move on to our first panel, and I would like to welcome from the Angels of Hope Against Human Trafficking, Derek Flynn, who is the board chair. From the Sudbury and Area Victim Services, we have Tiffany Paoli York, and you can help me with that, saying that proper. And she is part of the Anti-Human Trafficking Coordinator and Public Education. And from the Zonta Club of Brampton-Caledon, we have Kathleen Douglas, President-elect and Advocacy Chair, and she is with Melissa Marchand, who is a member from Zanita Advocacy Committee. We will be starting by providing each group 5 minutes. When you see my hand start going like this, please wrap it up. That means 15 seconds or less, okay? So I'm going to hand it over for the first 5 minutes to Derek Flynn. Derek, you have the floor.
Okay, Madam Chair and honorable committee members, thank you for providing us the opportunity to present here today on the issue of human trafficking. I'm here representing Angels of Hope Against Human Trafficking. We're a grassroots community-based organization located in Sudbury, Ontario. Since 2015, Angels of Hope has provided trauma-informed long-term support to over 300 human trafficking survivors and their families. Angels of Hope is the only organization in Northern Ontario dedicated exclusively to supporting human trafficking survivors. Sex trafficking survivors require specialized trauma-informed care to successfully exit from being exploited, reclaim their agency, and rebuild their life. The process of escaping and recovering from sex trafficking is complex, highly nuanced, and never linear. Once removed from being exploited, it can take an average of 7 attempts to successfully exit the sex industry due to ongoing vulnerabilities, trauma bonds, and lack of safe and secure shelter. In addition to broken promises and lack of resources, far too often a survivor's restorative journey is sabotaged by someone's lack of awareness and understanding of the survivor's mindset and trauma that they've endured. Trauma-informed care is much more than making a survivor feel good or treating them with kindness. It's not a catchphrase, a check mark on a website, or a certificate on the wall. The anti-human trafficking movement is being inundated with self-appointed experts that view human trafficking as fertile ground for grants and funding opportunities. These organizations hang out their open for business sign with absolutely no human trafficking experience, particularly working with trafficking survivors. Many of these organizations consider the needs of sex trafficking survivors secondary to their fundraising efforts, their career aspirations, notoriety, and social or political status. This destroys lives and puts survivors' lives at risk. Funding must be prioritized to go directly to support survivors. Survivors communicate through their behaviors, yet despite all the investment in education and awareness training, the majority of our survivors tell us that the experience that with the ignorance and the apathy, social and racial stigmatization, incompetence, corruption, and exploitation among law enforcement, the justice system, doctors, nurses, and social services workers. In addition to ongoing education and awareness training, the necessary paradigm shift to change this is only possible through educating those entering these professions. Angels of Hope is excited to provide human trafficking workshops to the next generation of legal professionals, including university law studies with the objective of building survivor confidence in the criminal justice system and inspire legal professionals to understand the survivor's mindset and empower them to seek justice. Survivors are very clear about why they don't trust or report to the police and are unwilling to testify against their trafficker. The following is a quote from an Indigenous survivor whose daughter was trafficked and ultimately murdered. This excerpt can be found in our report titled Increased Access to Justice for Survivors of Human Trafficking. When my daughter passed away, the justice system was so awful. I remember calling the police to verify that it was my daughter that they found. And the police officer right off the hop said, "Well, did you know your daughter was a prostitute? She was on drugs and she jumped out of a window?" At that time, I was able to put a police report about her ongoing exploitation and abuse. The trafficker got a slap on the wrist and had to take cultural sensitivity training. I think this is a major expression of how Indigenous women are treated in the justice system. Survivors believe it's unsafe to report to the police because of known cases of corruption and fear of being blamed, shamed, and it's estimated about 80% of trafficking cases go unreported to the police. Some survivors also expressed a deep concern about police being unable to get them out of trafficking situations because of the movement across jurisdictions, internal bias or judgment when seeking help, and the safety and risk to themselves and their loved ones. Most people underestimate the significant dangers to those being trafficked, their families, as well as other girls associated with the victim. Abuse and torture such as burns, cuts, breast and genital mutilation, anal and vaginal penetration with foreign objects are just some of the unspeakable horrors that these survivors experience. It's time to get serious about tearing down territorial silos, work collaboratively to build comprehensive human trafficking crime data, to develop policies, protocols, and generously funded programs that allow us to directly serve the long-term healing, recovery, and journey for the basic needs of human trafficking survivors. We're making progress, but there's a lot of heavy lifting yet to be done.
Thank you very much. I'm now going to move it over to the Sudbury Area Victim Services. Tiffany, you have the floor for 5 minutes.
Melanie, Deanna, Holly, Faith, Shayna, Megan. Bonjour, Annie, bonjour, and hello, Madam Chair and House members. My name is Tiffany Paoli York, and I'm the Anti-Human Trafficking Coordinator and Public Educator for Sudbury and Area Victim Services. I'm also the chair of the Anti-Human Trafficking Coalition in Greater Sudbury. I'm here to speak about human trafficking through the victims and survivors' voices that I've been trusted to share. I've brought a ribbon with the names of victims, survivors, and those who didn't survive that I've encountered over the past 2 years. Jasmine, Alicia, Ivory, Summer, and Heaven. I could spend my 5 minutes sharing the accolades for the amazing work that we've done in Sudbury and surrounding areas, but more importantly, I'm here to ask for more. Because the people deserve more. Our women, girls, and gender diverse people deserve more than a common shelter bed where they wonder if the person next to them is coming to retrieve them for their trafficker. They deserve more than 20 counseling sessions. Because after all of the atrocities and abuses that they've endured, they shouldn't have to give up their pets. These may seem like small and trivial things to those who have stability in their lives. But to the person who's finally able to exit human trafficking, those are the things that can help a person move into rehabilitation from the most heinous life, instead of returning to it, as they often feel no option due to the guilt and shame of the abuses that they have suffered. Tina, Marissa, Madison, Joanna, Brandy. I'm asking that you, as change makers for our country, share the voices of our women, girls, and gender diverse people that are screaming out for ongoing assistance, because human trafficking and its aftermath doesn't go away. It's not a matter of a simple rescue. It's an ongoing medical and dental care and ongoing support for prolapsed uteruses from sexual assaults, painful implant surgery from knocked out teeth, ongoing in therapy and supports for when the time comes that a victim and survivor's pimp is released from jail. An average police investigation for human trafficking in Sudbury takes 360 days. before charges can even be laid. Chloe, Drew, McKenna, Jesse, Patricia. Drugs can only be sold once, whereas a human being can be sold over and over again. Again, drugs can only be sold once. A human can be sold over and over again. Human beings are not to be discarded, yet the correlation between missing and murdered Indigenous girls, women, and two-spirited people is too stark to ignore. So tomorrow on Missing and Murdered Indigenous Girls, Women, and Two-Spirited People Awareness Day, affect change and do your part. To stop human trafficking, to stop our sisters being stolen, and to return our loved ones to their homes. Ashley, Hannah, Steph, Alex, Kim. The 4 school boards in Sudbury have agreed to an anti-sex trafficking protocol where every student between the grades of 7 and grade 12 will receive the very same preventative education and empowerment messaging. At Sudbury and Area Victim Services, our hope is to share the resources that we have created and to have all-party agreement and support of a national protocol for all Canadian students to receive the same anti-human trafficking preventative education and empowerment messaging as the Sudbury model. Stats Canada shared that the highest rates of human sex trafficking occur in Nova Scotia, Ontario, and Saskatchewan, an illustration that this is a national issue, from the prairies to the Maritimes and every town and city in between. Kaya, Mackenzie, Ashley. Does 4 to 5 years change a person? In 4 years, a trafficker may be released from jail on the very same day that a victim and survivor's child starts kindergarten. 4 to 5 years, a survivor may be starting a nursing school placement on the very same day that their trafficker is released from jail. 4 to 5 years, a survivor may be graduating from rehab on the very same day that their trafficker is released from jail. 4 to 5 years. A victim may have died by suicide because they couldn't face a world where their trafficker was free. Please take this into account when you consider the minimum sentencing for the heinous crime of trafficking in persons, whether that be sex trafficking, labor trafficking, or the trafficking of organs. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Tiffany. I'm now going to pass it over to the Zonta Club of Brampton-Caledon. And Kathleen, you have the floor for 5 minutes.
Bonjour. My name is Kathleen Douglas, a longtime member of Zonta, and I am joined by my colleague Melissa Marchand, a member of our advocacy committee. As a background, Zonta International is a service organization with over 100 years of service in building a better world for women and girls. We hold consultative status with the United Nations and support Global Sustainable Developments 5.2 and 8.7, which both address the issue of forced labor, modern slavery, and human trafficking. Zonta has a history of tackling the issue of sex trafficking going back to the sexual enslavement of women and girls in the 1990s Bosnian War, where we financially supported local aid organizations to provide recovery services for survivors. We know that the multi-billion-dollar global business of human sex trafficking has surpassed gun and drug trafficking for the first time in history. This speaks to the urgent need to address this heinous crime. Unfortunately, Ontario accounts for more than half the cases in Canada, and even more regrettably, the GTA, including Peel, is a sex trafficking hub. All of us in our own backyard. You have the relevant data. So instead, let me share with you our community perspective. The Zonta Club of Brampton-Caledon, a very small service group, has been an active member of the Peel Human Trafficking Network since its formation, the only volunteer organization amid the service-providing professionals. We contribute our time, energy, and funds to the work being done by these committed specialists. Our club advocacy strategy has a two-pronged approach. Firstly, through service. Our members volunteer at the local bingo hall twice a month to raise funds to distribute back to the community. Over the past few years, we have contributed over $100,000 to local organizations that are affiliated with the anti-trafficking effort. The funding has addressed gaps in various programs such as victim services, emergency services, and housing. The second approach is raising awareness. We conduct social media campaigns and host community awareness events where we feature experts who can speak directly to the very real impact in Peel. The 16 Days of Activism event this past November focused on awareness of the rapidly growing cases of trafficking, specifically in the Peel region, and a call to action to speak up and out. Inevitably, the guests at these events leave somewhat shaken, sometimes angered, but always educated by something they didn't know existed in our otherwise safe world. Feedback we receive includes, "I would never guess that this was such an issue," or "I'm relieved to know that there are people who are willing to do something about this," or even, "This is me." During the pandemic, we didn't rest. We hosted online educational presentations, panels, and symposia on the topic of gender-based violence and trafficking. We sponsor secondary school groups called Z Clubs, which raise awareness and inform peers, the prime target age group for trafficking, through programs, events, and activities that promote access to education, resources, and support. Our small, mighty group has inspired and supported other Zonta clubs and members across this country to educate themselves, spread the word, donate, and advocate on behalf of those whose voices have either been silenced or not been heard. In Peel, we pursue advocacy from an all-inclusive perspective, where we learn together, commit to a common cause, and then go beyond listening. We take action. What we have learned and what we believe would be the next best step in the prevention and mitigation of human trafficking is more community awareness, education through the secondary schools, perhaps built right into the curriculum, and continued sustainable funding for the current projects that make a difference in the lives of those whose names we will never know. Our newest club member is Lena. She's a trafficking survivor, and I would like to relate her words. Being trafficked can cause severe trauma, and survivors often need intense, specialized services and support to rebuild their lives. And these services are delivered through nonprofits who have active voices and are advocates for justice for those impacted by the sex industry, and assisting them in finding necessary support that will aid them in their journey to safety, healing, and restoration. Respectfully, Zonta is one of those nonprofits with an active voice as we promote awareness, challenge stigma, and encourage action through our advocacy commitment. We thank you for this opportunity to share with you from a community perspective, a volunteer perspective, a human perspective.
Thank you very much. We're now going to start with our rounds of questioning. Our first round is 6 minutes. I'm going to pass the floor now to Dominique Vienne. Dominique, you have 6 minutes.
Merci, Madame la Présidente.
Thank you very much, Madam Chair. Hello to all of the witnesses, and thank you for being here this afternoon. My first questions will be for Mr. Flynn. Hello, Mr. Flynn. Please tell us about the change that you were mentioning, that you were hoping to reduce barriers and working in silos that could improve the situation for trafficking. What situation were you referencing specifically?
There's several situations. The silos we have, I mean, there's incredible people all over Canada working in this area, but we work within our own sphere. So now there's things are changing, but different police organizations, for example, we had one just recently where if you're a trafficking victim or survivor here in Ottawa and being moved between different jurisdictions, oftentimes the link between different police agencies and organizations and victim services organizations, there are jurisdictional boundaries that complicate things. And although you can work it out at maybe a day or two down the road, when it's 3 o'clock in the morning and you're trying to save a girl's life and get her to safety or some kind of a shelter, we need to tear that down so that there's collaboration among all of those agencies. Not only that, from a data perspective, we all need data, and nobody is really getting serious about, first of all, in identifying the different forms of trafficking and identifying the data that is vital to legislators So when we come with our hand out saying we need help funding for this, that, or the other thing, we need to have good, sustainable, credible data to provide. We don't have that right now. You know, we've got the human trafficking hotline, it's fantastic. And we've got each of the local victim services agencies, that's fantastic. All of the different social services groups, they have their individual data, but we're not working together to share that. If I had to ask somebody today how many girls called, we're not going to be able to provide that answer.
Je vais devoir vous...
I'll have to interrupt you here because I don't have a lot of time and I do have a lot of questions. And this is similar to what we've heard at this committee, that the different jurisdictions and the different organizations, you talked about police agencies, but there's the whole provincial jurisdiction as well. And so we need to do more for victims to be safe. Mr. Flynn, you said that in 80% of cases that are not reported, or how are they dealt with for these women who are afraid to report because they don't trust police officers? How do you deal with that? How could we create a recommendation? What could we do as a committee to change that?
Thank you for that question. It's a great question. What we do at Angels of Hope is, number one, the most important thing is the safety and security of the survivor, and if they're her immediate family and anybody in our network. That's the number one thing. And then we provide services that allow her to look after her health needs. And we provide a wraparound assessment in terms of what her overall needs are. You know, maybe there's a criminal justice system element to that too. But ultimately, we provide a set of services that make them feel safe and empowered, so that if and when they're ready, if they, you know, maybe a week down the road, they've got their stuff together and it's like, okay, you know what, I'm ready to talk to the police, I'm comfortable doing that now, then I'll testify maybe against my trafficker. But we provide that safety and security net and services to provide that for them in that immediate time.
Il me reste combien de temps?
How much time do I have left? Inaudible. Thank you very much. I had other questions for you on the organizations that are funded that shouldn't be funded. I would like you to tell us more about that, but perhaps it'll come back a little later. Miss York, do we stop perpetrators quickly enough? Many witnesses told us that nothing was happening, and you mentioned that they were getting a slap on the wrist.
Yes, thank you for that question. I do believe, based on the information that we get from our survivors and our victims and the family members of those who don't survive, what we get from that information is that those very small 4 to 5 years at a minimum is what we're seeing for the traffickers who are just put away on that charge. In that time, all of our feedback, we haven't had anybody.
Est-ce que selon vous, Madame York, on a...
Do you believe that sentences are not strong enough?
Absolutely not. And that is 100% what we hear from our victims or survivors and their family members, is that their healing process hasn't even begun by the time that the trafficker is out of jail and looking for them.
Mais en fait, c'est ce que...
So, sentences are not strong enough. Apologies.
Time is up. I'm sorry. I know they're excellent questions, but your time is up. I'm now going to move over to, or actually, Sonia Sidhu, and Sonia's online. So, Sonia, you have the floor for 6 minutes.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I want to thank all the witnesses today. Especially, I know Zonta International Club is working very hard in Brampton. And thank you, Melissa, Kathleen, actually everyone who is appearing here today. And thank you so much working hard on the ground. I know Zonta has been actively involved in the sponsorship and organizations of Z clubs in local high schools. And this offer, the effort you has been making is quite successful. We have heard in this committee that youth are being targeted online, especially during the pandemic, as you said in your statement. Can you comment on the importance of reaching youth early on through prevention?
Do you want to speak to that?
Kathleen?
Thank you for that. While I am not an expert, I'm a community supporter and ally. What we have found is that peer-to-peer knowledge is very successful. And the Z Club members are leaders within their schools. And so we find when they present information sessions, when they conduct campaigns, when they work with groups like White Ribbon Campaign, for example, it's very successful because they're talking to their peers, which is the prime target age to be groomed for trafficking. And so we found that to be very, very successful. And these are efforts that are being done on their own. It's not as if we are telling them what to do. They see the need, as we have identified, and they work with our Zonta Club to ensure that the information is out there and available in whatever form is appropriate, whether it's through presentations, whether it's through lectures, whether it's through events. They are there talking to their peers about the dangers and the risks. And you're absolutely right. From everything we know and what we've heard from the professionals is that the pandemic was absolutely a dangerous time for young people to be groomed for trafficking.
Thank you. In your experience, what are some unique challenges faced by survivors of human trafficking? And how can these be overcome through targeting support and services?
Again, I'm not the professionals. We have professionals here who can speak to direct experience. However, what we have learned, and again, because we have a member in our club who is a survivor, she has spoken to us and shared with us, among other survivors who have been speakers at our events, and they will talk about the fact that it takes years to overcome the trauma, particularly the stigma, the overcoming the actual physical challenges that they have, but getting back into society because they're looking for housing, they're looking for being well cared for in their health, looking perhaps to be re-educated. And so it's reintegration into the community is what we're hearing, which is why we support the Encourage, which is a hub as to bring the survivors in, where they are first treated for the immediate needs they have. It's a triage approach. Then they have transitional housing and then look for third stage housing. So we support those groups and find those opportunities where we can provide funding that fills in those little places that perhaps their sustainable funding does not cover. And we have heard from them that they are so grateful for the work that's being done, particularly in Peel, where there's a very much coordinated approach, very successfully, because all the groups come together in the Peel Human Trafficking Committee, and we work together from the service providers to the groups who provide the actual boots on the ground. Elizabeth Fry Society, for example, the Peel Police are very, very responsive to the needs of our survivors.
Thank you. And how can government policies be improved to better address the issue of human trafficking? And what recommendation would you make to our committee on this topic? Anybody can give this answer. Thank you.
Sorry, I was just going to add, our stance through Brampton, Caledon, Zonta is that we would like to encourage a broader application of learnings through organizations like ours and ones that we see here today in terms of fund development, advocacy, awareness, and education across the board to make it more impactful and sustainable in terms of mitigating the risks associated, because there's so many complex areas, as you alluded to, MP Sidhu, pertaining to mitigating youth from the beginning. We even, when it comes down to it, statistically, like children who grow up in families where there's violence may suffer a range of behavioral emotional disturbances that can also be associated with perpetrating and experiencing violence later in life. So starting at the root, at the youngest level possible, in terms of prevention and understanding, and also just the awareness that, that the issue exists to begin with, and that it is affecting and impacting, children. 1 in 3 cases of human trafficking is per children, according to the United Nations statistics. So, education is what we're advocating for.
Right in the curriculum, like writing from starting, very gentle words. Sorry.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Do you have more time?
Seconds, so probably just wrapping it up.
Anybody else has a last comment on that?
No, I think we're okay. So I thanks so much, Sonia. Now we're going to just move over and we'll have Adrienne LaRoche for 6 minutes.
Merci beaucoup, Madame la Présidente.
Thank you very much, Madam Chair. Thank you to the witnesses for being here this afternoon to talk about this study that's hard. We hear very touching testimonies and shocking testimonies on how victims are treated, and we were able to visit organizations during this study. I would like to start by highlighting that tomorrow is May 5th, Red Dress Day, where we will reflect on violence against Indigenous women and girls who were murdered or who disappeared. And we're seeing through this study that women are disproportionately impacted, and even more so for Indigenous women and girls. And this is horrible for 2023. Tiffany, if I may call you by your first name, you raised this matter of the red dress, and I would like you to tell us more. We have recommendations. There was the inquiry on Indigenous women and girls, and there were the calls to action from the Truth and Reconciliation Commission. Are there some that we should focus on and that we should have the political will to implement?
Thank you very much. I think that we can look at all of the stats, and Stats Can, and the information that we receive through our studies and all of the data, but I can tell you, I would say 90% of the victims and survivors, 90% of these victims and survivors have been of Indigenous descent. So I would challenge those numbers that we have in our data, and I would challenge each and every one, not only members of Parliament, but anyone who's watching this, who's listening to this, to take those calls to action seriously. They're all important, every single one of them.
Yes, there are over 200 of them. So we need to work on implementing them. Kathleen, you spoke about social media and awareness campaigns on social media. But we know that the federal government is working on a bill in order to counter online hate and online abuse. What needs to be in that bill that we can add to our recommendations, and that could also touch upon human trafficking, online recruitment, and during the pandemic, human trafficking moved online. So I would like you to share any recommendations on an eventual bill that could help victims.
Thank you very much for that. I think one of the things that we discovered is that young people listen to young people. And it's fine for us to have gray hair because we know everything. The reality is that they listen to each other. And so social media is their language. We must talk about the human trafficking in their language, which is social media. It's TikTok, it's Instagram, it's all the other programs that there's to whatever is coming in the next couple of years. When we visited, I think it was at the airport, we saw right in one of the bathroom stalls, there's a big thing about human trafficking. And that's great to see. But it's very benign. It's a passive approach. What we need is to actually have some campaigns that address the challenges, like what to look for, to be careful, to not listen to the person who's love bombing you at the beginning and then turning to become your pimp. We really need to talk to them in their language to be active in a social media campaign. to actually start instilling the fact that this is not just, oh, it can happen to somebody else. This happens to our daughters, our nieces, our granddaughters. This happens in our own backyards. And to help parents understand what the signs are. From everything that we have studied and learned, and again, we are not the experts, we rely on our experts to give us the information, we know that parents never believe it can happen to their children. So we need to educate parents to understand the signs and the symptoms in campaigns, and we need to educate the youth, who are the prime targets, to really understand what trafficking is. And it's not just a nice boyfriend who's running into problems because he's got somebody after him. We need to get to them in their language, actively in their language.
You're absolutely right. And there is the Not in My City campaign at airports to say that it's unacceptable, but it's true that it doesn't solve the issue, and you stated that very clearly. And you also stated there's also the matter of education and prevention, but we also have to work very hard on prevention and how to better detect cases of human trafficking. I'll come back to you, Mr. Flynn, on my next turn for that.
Thanks so much. So we'll get back to that. Lindsay, you have the floor now for 6 minutes.
Thank you so much to all the witnesses for coming today. I wanted to sort of build upon what my colleague was talking about. My colleague, who actually usually sits on this committee, I'm visiting once again. I used to be able to sit on this committee. I miss it. But she put forward a motion in the House. It was adopted, and it was calling for the red dress alert system. And it would be very much like the Amber Alerts to help better track and I think talk about that data, that disaggregated data. I think that Mr. Flynn, you were asking for. Can maybe some of you talk about the importance of that red dress alert system? I don't know what order you want to go in.
So I can definitely speak to that. I think as we have all seen, the Amber Alert system has worked. We have it for a reason. We've adopted it as a country for a reason, because it works. And when we look at those huge, huge numbers of missing and murdered Indigenous girls and women, that red dress alert, that is people whose names may not end up on this ribbon. That's people that maybe are going to make it home, that are going to be survivors.
Do you think that could be part of that public education awareness that you're talking about exactly?
Yeah, absolutely. I think that if we bombarded our kids, and that's essentially, as Kathleen said, that's where our focus needs to be. The average age of entry into trafficking is 13 years old. And I want you all to think about a 13-year-old in your life, or think about yourself as a 13-year-old. That is not what a 13-year-old should be worrying about. And I think that when we do that public education, and that something that we're really good at in Sudbury is that education piece, all of our kids in 7 to 12s in high schools and elementary schools are getting that same streamlined messaging and that empowerment, that not only is this something that affects every single school board, it affects every single student, every single school, every teacher, everyone in our communities. So when we have that same language, that same education, and we really approach it to not only just be keeping yourself safe, it's keeping the ones that we love and we care about safe as well. And that really resonates with the kids. It really resonates with youth that maybe it's not going to happen to me, but I know enough to keep my friends safe. And that's something that really seems to resonate and work with the youth. And whatever that method is, we will definitely go with the stuff that works.
I don't know if anybody else wanted to pop in there.
Just one of the things that I've noticed, just to reiterate what Tiffany has said, identifying the different types of grooming and the stages of human trafficking is so critical. Most people don't identify themselves as being trafficked until after they're out, right? And I've had conversations with so many people, and they'll say, well, that would never happen to my kids. It's not in my backyard. It's not in my school. And then you sit with a 13-year-old girl, and she'll say, well, they were doing that to my friend. Is that what that was? And it's having those just generic conversations that are genuine, and they'll come forward and say, wow, that's what that was. That was happening to my friend. So it's critical.
Yeah. One of the things that concerns me, of course, we've seen a consistent defunding of women's shelters. We talk about that abuse both provincially, it's happening now federally. Can you talk about how that's going to impact the organizations that you work in specifically?
So every day in the Victim Services Office in Sudbury, we get a call for an intimate partner violence, domestic violence, or human trafficking case. Often, those shelter beds are either full or a human trafficking victim doesn't fit their mandate or their policies and procedures, or they're too high risk. Yeah, they're too high risk. They cause an increase in security risk for other people staying in the shelter. So what happens is our victims and survivors of human trafficking are going to a low barrier shelter instead of a domestic violence or an intimate partner violence or a human trafficking shelter. And that's only going to get worse.
One of the cuts that was felt, I think, in the community, and you were talking about access to resources, and I think about legal resources being available to victims. Legal aid is a huge part of that. And there were some attempts by the federal government to sort of bridge that, but maybe could each of your organizations talk about the impact that increasing that legal aid envelope at both levels of government would have for the people that you serve?
This is a very important question, but we only have 30 seconds. So if you want to get started on that, great, and then we can add on to the extra at the end.
Okay, I was just going to say that as part of Zonta, we do funding, as Kathleen mentioned, over $100,000 worth of funding towards transitional housing for those women and female identifying persons. And they are able to stay there for upwards of months at a time, depending on how long it takes for the case to be, brought to where it needs to be to resolve, to the case to a resolve, I guess. So in terms of funding, this is very minimal in the spectrum of where it should and could be.
Perfect. We're going to carry on. So we're now going to go to our second round. So it'll be 5 minutes, 5 minutes, 2.5, 2.5. And we'll start with Eric Malello for 5 minutes.
Thank you, Chair. And I'd just like to offer you the opportunity to finish your thought on that last question if you wanted.
Thank you. Yeah, definitely. To make the funding available and as part of the, the spreading of the word in general, I think that would be the most critical and feasible approach going forward.
I appreciate that, and thank you to all of you for being here. This is obviously an important discussion. Like my colleague from the NDP, I'm visiting this committee today. I don't regularly sit on it, but unfortunately, I come from Kenora and also in Northern Ontario, so I'm happy to see there's a Northern Ontario contingent here today. But unfortunately, Kenora knows the issue of human trafficking too well. It was sort of a corridor between Thunder Bay and Winnipeg, and it's really been getting a lot more attention in recent years. And the community members have really been. I think we've all had our eyes open to the issue that's been there for many years. I'd like to start with Mr. Flynn, the Northern Ontario Angels. I'm just curious to know a bit more about your organization. Does it operate solely within Sudbury, or are you doing work as well outside in other areas of Northern Ontario, such as Kenora, for example?
Well, we're based in Sudbury, but we have clients all through the north. A lot of our work is done, of course, and especially through COVID it was, but a lot of our stuff is done remotely through Zoom. We have support groups and peer support groups that we meet on a weekly basis, and throughout the north and inside. Actually, we have throughout Ontario. Really, we have a client base that we meet with. That's the majority. We do public education workshops as well throughout the north and in the Indigenous community.
I appreciate that. Thank you. And I also noticed, just looking through your website, learning more about your organization, that there's certainly a component of Indigenous culture within the counseling that you provide. And I think that's incredibly important. I know unfortunately don't have statistics for a number of reasons that were mentioned earlier, but we know based off of what we've been able to gather that the overwhelming majority of women and girls that are trafficked in the Kenora region are Indigenous, and I'm just wondering if you could speak to that. And I'd like to get others to comment as well on how important it is to have that cultural component when it comes to counseling. Yeah, whoever wants to jump in.
So absolutely, cultural sensitivity and cultural supports for any culture of an individual that's leaving a trafficking situation, that's going through a trafficking situation, is so integral. We are the only non-Indigenous organization to sit on the Restorative Justice Committee with one of our local bands in Sudbury. So what that allows us to do is to have those elders and that different restorative justice approach in a human trafficking situation. And that really kind of flips things from the regular narrative that we have, that victims and survivors are very separate from the perpetrators. So it's definitely an Indigenous perspective on healing and making that come full circle. Just to speak to your connection with Kenora, I also sit on the Northern Alliance against human trafficking, and we have members in Kenora as well. So what we do is we share our resources, like our school protocols. We're sharing those. We're sharing our pathways, so that if someone comes, as Mr. Flynn said, from a different jurisdiction, we're able to say, okay, my friend in Kenora, this is the services and this is what we can offer in that place. Maybe there's a place of safety there, or maybe we're going to head down south and I'm going to connect with my resources there. And breaking down those silos, I think, is so important. And whether it comes from an Indigenous perspective, from a settler perspective, from an immigrant perspective, whatever that survivor and that victim needs, that's what we try to provide them. And sometimes it's flying by the seat of your pants and going, okay, this is what this person needs. How can we make that happen? And we're very fortunate within our victim services portfolio to really be able to work with our victim quick response program and to bring those survivors and those victims what they need.
Thanks so much, Tiffany. We're now going to pass it over to Mark Saray. Mark, 5 minutes.
Thank you, Madam Chair, and thank you to the four of you for being here today. And your testimony is going to help us with our recommendations. Mr. Flynn, really sorry for your loss, and thank you for your courage to explain with your daughter and the work that you're doing. Obviously, Tiffany Pulley-York, thank you for the recommendations. So you got 7 recommendations here you provided us. So I wanted to ask both of you, starting off, we talked about 20 counseling sessions, 1 shelter bed. You talk about needs, the patchwork of services. The federal, with the federal committee here, what can we do? And Mr. Flynn, you mentioned about jurisdiction and tired of hearing that aspect, but what can we do as a federal government working more closely with the province to look at that wraparound services that the victim needs?
First of all, I just want to reiterate that the loss that I spoke about was one of our survivors' daughters, just to be clear. We also are getting tired of the silos. Trust me, the frontline workers are screaming at the top of their lungs. And after this many years, we shouldn't have to anymore. But we need to recognize play it out. If we have a young girl that, she's extracted by the police, they bring her to the police station at 3 o'clock in the morning. Now what? there's less than 20 beds between the GTA and here in Ottawa, specifically for human trafficking survivors. And as Tiffany mentioned, human trafficking survivors are unique in that they have suffered trauma that is unlike anything else. And you can't put them in a typical shelter because it's dangerous to the shelter workers, it's dangerous to the other women and children that may be at that shelter, and it's dangerous for the survivor to be placed there. It's a failure every time. So it's unconscionable that we only have less than 20 beds from Southern Ontario for human trafficking survivors. That's critical. Because as I mentioned in my speech, typically it takes about seven attempts to exit. So if they've got nowhere to go, we give them a couple of nights in a hotel and a Tim Hortons card and a cell phone, and 3 or 4 nights down the road, they're back out on the street, either with survival sex, which I guarantee you within a week they're going to be trafficked again. So it just becomes a never-ending cycle. And one of the things, and I hear this from survivors all the time, they expect us to fail them, and we're doing a pretty good job at failing them. They're not really good at platitudes and shrug shoulders. They want results, and it's our responsibility to provide them with that.
Tiffany, thank you.
Thank you, and I can definitely echo the sentiments of Mr. Flynn that survivors are expecting us to fail. And when those calls come in at 3 o'clock in the morning to the police station, or they bring a young person there, a few months ago, that call is coming to me. Every call the Greater Sudbury Police and the OPP in our jurisdiction covers in terms of human trafficking, they come to myself and my team, and we're there at 3 o'clock in the morning. We're back in the office at 8 o'clock in the morning. And I commend everyone who works in victim services in anti-human trafficking because it's a hard job. And when we're faced with a survivor who says, I need this, I need safety, I need a shelter bed, that understands that I'm going to be waking up screaming in the middle of the night, remembering them branding me, and not disturbing other people who have their own challenges and their own traumas. But as Mr. Flynn said, human trafficking is so unique. It's the selling, it's the making a commodity of a human being. And that trauma doesn't just end in 1 year, 365 days.
And I have 20 seconds left, so I'm just going to ask, we're going to have Stats Canada coming to the committee testifying. Can you provide us with, because you talked a bit about data, can you provide us to the committee in writing some of the data that you need to collect better to understand and some of the elements so that when we get with Stats Canada, we could follow? Thank you, Madam Chair.
Thank you very much. And I think you almost have that timer with you there, Mark. Anyway, I'm now going to pass it over for 2.5 minutes, and we'll go to Audrey LaRoche.
Merci beaucoup.
Thank you very much, Madam Chair. As I was stating at the end of my previous turn, we've been talking a lot about prevention and victim support, but we need to be able to detect cases of human trafficking. Mr. Flynn, in your opening remarks, and you mentioned it again earlier, a lack of resources. To come back to what my colleague said, and just to confirm, you talked about organizations that received funding that perhaps shouldn't have received funding. So would you be able to clarify what you meant on that, and why, even with the action plan, the numbers in human trafficking, why are they still increasing? Is it a lack of resources, a lack of coordination, communication? Because we know that this is something that impacts different levels of government and different departments. So if you could start with the organizations that shouldn't have received funding and then answer the rest of my questions after that.
That's a good question. Human trafficking is an umbrella term, right? So, but supporting survivors of sex trafficking is not. It's very specific in the requirements. So when we throw lots of money, lots of funding under that umbrella, it doesn't always trickle down to where it needs to go. So we've got, education and awareness will always be a major part of the process and in preventing and serving survivors. But we need to make sure that under that umbrella, the right amount of resources are going to supporting the survivors in their recovery and help them reintegrate back into society. And that's what's lacking now. There's people that are jumping in the bandwagon that are getting funding, and it's not that their hearts are not in the right place, and it's not that they're worthy. But in terms of priority, we need to prioritize the survivors and their recoveries.
10 seconds.
En 10 secondes, Madame
In 10 seconds, Melissa, you weren't able to respond to my questions, so is there anything that you would like to add on this matter and why the action plan didn't help and why the numbers aren't changing?
Just to speak to that, we're in agreement with what's being said by the agencies beside us as well, that more funding needs to go directly to survivor support, and the understanding of the nature of the survivor and the layers that are incorporated into the healing of that survivor, and it goes beyond.
Melissa, I have to take. Sorry, I thought it was going to be a very short answer, but it wasn't. So I'm now going to have to pass it over to. I'm not going to have to pass it. I pass it over to Lindsay. Lindsay, 2.5 minutes.
Thank you. So in terms of finding that independence, if someone can get through and out of that lifestyle, I heard from many people within that system that a lot of things await survivors once they're able to get out, and some of that is their being indebted. Their traffickers will take out huge loans in many different forms in their name. There's a bill in Ontario that is trying to adjust for that. Maybe if you're nodding because you know about it, so if you could talk about the importance of passing that, but also where the federal government can ensure that we play a role in that as well.
So I was fortunate enough to be able to sit in a conference with the major banks in Ontario talking about the FinTrack proposal. And I think that's something amazing that's going on in Ontario. That's great for me because I'm from Ontario. But what about the rest of Canada? And as I said earlier, the problem of human trafficking isn't specific or unique to one province or one community. If we can have this at a national level, that would be helping Canadians, not pigeonholing that people from Ontario are more important than people from the north, than people from the west, than people from the east.
Anybody? I probably don't have enough time to ask. Yeah.
If I may just add, one of the things that we have not really talked about is the newcomers and the international students. Certainly in Peel and in the Brampton area, we have thousands of international students coming in. And quite often, because of the background they have, when they come to Canada, they are not prepared for what they're going to see. And they're very often the victims of trafficking from well-meaning aunties and people from their villages and people coming in. And that has to start right from when they're coming into this country, understanding they have rights and they do not have to be trafficked because they have to pay back these loans and they are obligated to provide well for their families. So I think we also need to look at international students as being a prime target for trafficking. And that's a GTA Peel region issue.
Well, in London, we actually had a case of those coming from Ukraine who fell into that, and it was really quite, disturbing. So I appreciate that point.
Thank you so much. On behalf of the committee, I would really like to thank you all, Derek, Tiffany, Kathleen, and Melissa, for coming and providing your expertise on this. We are about to suspend. We're going to suspend very, very quickly because we have everybody online. We just have to check the mic tests. So suspend for about 1 minute. to welcome everybody on our panel for the second half. Today we have coming from Statistics Canada, we have Kathleen O'Coin, Chief of Analysis Unit, Canadian Centre for Justice and Community Safety Statistics. From Statistics Canada, we also have Lucy Leonard, Director, Canadian Centre for Justice and Community Safety Statistics. And we also have Shelley Walker, Chief Executive Officer of the Women's Trucking Federation of Canada. And if you may have heard our third witness, we did have a bit of an issue when it came to connection. So I'm going to pass it over now for the first 5 minutes to Statistics Canada, and you have 5 minutes to share. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Madam Chair and honorable member of the Standing Committee. I'd like to thank you for this opportunity to present our most recent police reported statistic on human trafficking in Canada. And most of the information I will be focusing on today are part of publication that we provided to the clerk for your reference. So it is important to know that the police reported data that I will be drawing from only reflect those incidents of human trafficking that come to the attention of the police. And we know that many victims, as it was mentioned today, are reluctant to report. As such, this data underestimate the true scope of human trafficking in Canada. However, we think it monitors like this type of crime, which this data is available and important to identify overall trends to highlight who is most at risk and where this crime occurred from, again, a police reported perspective. So between 2011 and 2021, there were over 300 and 500 incidents of human trafficking reported by police involving 2,688 victims. From this data, we know that human trafficking is a form of gender-based violence, with the vast majority of victims being women and girls. Further to that, we also know that 1/4 of the victims are girls that is under the age of 18, and while of accused person, 8 in 10 are men and boys. 9 in 10 victims of police reported human trafficking knew their trafficker, and 1/3 of the victims were trafficked by an intimate partner. What we know as well is that the research has shown that traffickers often pose as potential romantic partners to recruit or lure individuals with the end goal of trafficking them. While men represented the large majority of adult accused persons, more than half of the youth accused were girls. So female youth are more and more perceived as better positioned to appear trustworthy and thus are tasked to lure other girls. So it is important to note that the boundaries between female trafficking victims and offenders are becoming increasingly blurred, and as such, there might be a high proportion of the female youth accused of trafficking where they themselves are victims of human trafficking. So from our police reported data, we are not able to discern whether the human trafficking incidents were related to sexual or labor exploitation or both. However, when we explore other related charges within the human trafficking incident, we find that about 41% of the incidents were that there was a secondary offense, and almost 6 in 10 were related to a sex trade offense, while 1/4 involved a sexual assault. So again, highlighting that most of these incidents reported to the police are related to sexual exploitation. So between 2011 and 2021, the large majority of human trafficking incidents were reported to police in urban areas. So more specifically, since 2011, more than 4 in 10 of these incidents were reported to police in 4 cities: Toronto, Ottawa, Montreal, and Halifax. And some of it, again, was mentioned as part of this committee. So it is important to note that the differences in the number of victims reported between Canadian cities also likely impact by regional differences, such as local human trafficking awareness campaign, specialized training units we see among police services, as well as available resources for detecting and reporting human trafficking. So in addition to that, we know that human trafficking is difficult to successfully prosecute. And as a result of that, some police services, under the advice of the Crown, they may recommend or lay other type of charges to move the case through the justice system. So as such, these charging practices in terms of the overall counts of human trafficking victims could be reduced. So turning now to how these cases are handled in our criminal court, we look at some of the data from our integrated criminal court survey over an 11-year period that is between 2010-11 and 2020 and 2021. And we found that there were around 950 cases involving just under 3,000 trafficking charges. And overall, the number of trafficking charges and cases increased over this period examined, which again was mentioned today in terms of a number of cases increasing. According to the adult criminal court's record, human trafficking cases take longer to complete than cases involving other violent offenses, and specifically human trafficking cases took a median number of 382 days to complete. This was more than twice as long as sex trade-related cases and other violent offenses cases. The data also found that fewer cases of human trafficking charges resulted in guilty decision. Around 1 in 8 human trafficking cases completed in adult criminal court over the period of the study resulted in a guilty decision for human trafficking charges. In comparison, a guilty decision was much more common for cases with a sex trade charge and cases with a violent offense charge. So I'll leave it there for now. Madam Chair, thank you very much, and honorable member of the committee for your attention. And myself and my colleague Cathy Aucoin would be happy to answer some of the questions and some of the issues that have been raised, and also other works we're doing around increasing this information and other, as was mentioned, around missing person in Canada as well. Thank you.
Fantastic. Thank you so much. I'd now like to welcome Shelley Walker from the Women's Trucking Association. You have 5 minutes for your opening comments.
Thank you. My name is Shelley Walker, and I'm the founder and chief executive officer of the Women's Trucking Federation of Canada. I would like to thank you for the opportunity to speak here today. I've been involved with the transportation industry for over 30 years. I started my career as a school bus operator in the last 20 plus years as a professional driver. I became aware of human trafficking several years ago and decided I needed to learn more. I reached out to Timmy Nagy, an expert in this space, because I wanted to do more within the transportation industry. Through funding from the Ontario Ministry of Transportation, we hired Timmy as cause to create an online survivor-led driver training course for professional drivers. We have also wrapped several 53-foot trailers with a no human trafficking message. We host a public launch with each trailer. We invite various levels of government, local police, victim services, and local organizations to attend and give remarks about the services available in their area. We have also championed the Ontario Ministry of Transportation to include human trafficking awareness training and entry-level training. Hopefully, the Federal Minister of Transportation will also include this in the federal mandate. We would like to see online survivor-led training mandatory for every class of commercial license, whether you drive a cab or a school bus, transportation vans, everybody needs to have this training. Every year at our annual conference, we bring in guests to speak about human trafficking. We want our attendees to learn more about what they can do to help, whether it's helping to spread knowledge or financial contributions. Unfortunately, so many Canadians still believe that it doesn't happen here in Canada. We believe a solution for this is probably a custom-designed mobile educational trailers. With government funding and partnering with survivor-led organizations, we can make a difference. These trailers would have the ability to travel to remote locations to spread education and awareness. Skills Ontario and the Infrastructure Health and Safety Association both use these types of educational trailers and are having great success in the respectful areas. We all have a role to play in fighting to end human trafficking. By working together instead of against each other, we can all make a difference. Thank you.
Thank you very much. We're now going to pass over and start our rounds of questioning. We're going to start with 6 minutes. We will start with Anna Roberts. Anna, 6 minutes.
Chair, and thank you very much for appearing today and helping us better understand how we can make a difference. So my first question is going to go to Ms. Walker, if I can, I don't know if it's Miss or Mrs. So I understand that you've worked with Tamia, and we have heard from her, and she's very insightful and provided this committee with a lot of updated information that we need to know and what we need to do. So my first question to you is, are truckers trained on how to identify potential victims of human traffickers on the road?
No, they're not.
And would you agree that the education of training them would help?
Yes, it would. I think it's very important that drivers learn.
So I'm just wondering, it's a $150 billion business. I hate to call it that because I can't think of any other name. So if we stop the money, if we follow the money and stop the money, it should stop the human trafficking. Do you agree?
I just think that, it might, but I think in reality, they'll just find different ways to do it. If we look at the lifespan of criminals in various ways, whether they're drug dealers, when you look at the mafia, they just found ways to legalize their businesses. So I think we need to do a lot more than what we're currently doing.
So one of the questions that I like to ask is, you've been a professional driver for 20 years, and we keep hearing that the human trafficking numbers keep going up and up and up, and the only way that we could stop it is to stop the money flow. And I really believe that, speaking to different officers and different individuals. Would you agree that if the government were to create a registration of all users and perpetrators and have that available for every single truck driver, so that they understand, if they see these individuals with the young girls, that they might be able to be more informed to call the police or maybe help them out?
Yes, I do. I think it would be really important. And I think, if at some point we could create like a mobile app that's easily accessible by truck drivers as well as victim service agencies, et cetera, it would make things a lot easier.
And I also think, or ask your opinion, if we were to seize the assets of all users, all perpetrators, every single asset, and take that money, put it back into the safe homes where we can provide the victims with the services and the what they need to move on and to get away from this, would you think that would stop the flow of human trafficking?
Yes, I do, because I think basically right now the traffickers do not get enough jail time or any kind of monumental penalty. So if we take it how we have done that in other areas by seizing assets and returning that money, it's a great way to go. And it's something, the government should have done a long time ago.
And I also think that maybe what we need to do is look at the fact that their sentences do not meet the crime. Would you agree with that?
Yes, I totally agree with that.
Okay, like 2 years, 4 years. I mean, like that on good behavior, they're out in 6 months. We need to let people know that if you're going to commit a crime of human trafficking, you're going to be put in jail for a very, very long time. So I would say then that, do you think that truckers across Canada should be mandated to take training in order to help us with that process? Because by the sounds of it, Ms. Walker, you've told us that the truckers are probably our eyes and ears as opposed to just leaving the responsibility to the police departments.
That's just it. We travel the main corridors of Canada. The truck stops, the rest areas where a lot of this occurs is right where we are. And I hate to say it, but we commonly as drivers refer to these ladies that we see wandering around in the parking lot as a lot lizard, that they're just somebody out there looking to make some money for the night, and they're willing to do anything to do it. By having this type of training and letting drivers know that not everyone knocking on their door is a sex worker, that we have some very young girls that are being trafficked. I can tell you in the first year of the human trafficking awareness training that we put out online, the drivers that we had take the course, the drivers that reached out to us and said, oh my God, I didn't know what I was seeing, but now I know. We've had drivers that have made some calls to 911. We've had drivers make calls down in the US. So I think, yes, driver training is important. And that's why my organization, as well as myself, has been very vocal on the need to make it mandatory training. And we're very excited that we're able to get that in Ontario on the entry-level side. So the truck training schools, every newly licensed driver coming out in the province of Ontario will have human trafficking awareness training.
So when we were doing our tour across Canada, we went to a few different airports, and we saw stickers on bathroom walls of women that have been trafficking. I think we should also, I don't know, I'm going to ask your opinion of this. Why don't we put the perpetrators and the users up there as well? What do you think of that?
What? That's that's a little out of my scope of expertise, but on a personal level, I am not opposed to that.
Thanks very much. I think we know what Anna's going to take care of. Thank you very much. Emanuela's online. I'm just going to pass it to Emanuela for 6 minutes.
Thank you, Madam Chair, and I'd like to thank our witnesses for being here with us today. My first question is to Mrs. Walker. Well, first of all, thank you for the initiative that you've taken through your work to help women and girls who are in situations of human trafficking and of violence. I guess I'm curious because I'm not sure if you had mentioned it, but I just want to have you maybe repeat if you did already. Is it very common for people in the trucking industry to witness this type of crime? And if so, do you enter, I mean, have you ever had any experiences with or seen, and contacted women in this situation? And yeah, I guess I'll let you start with that.
It's more common than we like. I can tell you as a driver, I have seen it. I have had them knock on my door. And when it first started to occur to me early on in my truck driving career, I was just thinking to myself, oh, Lord, not again. Stop knocking on my truck. I need to sleep. I have to get up in 3 hours and haul a load. So quite often, as drivers not knowing anything better, we holler at them, just go away, get away from my truck. Once I took training, then it began to open up my eyes and I realized what was going on. And then you try to look for signs, pay attention to where they're going, knowing to call 911, regardless of where I was, to try to get help. I can tell you my experiences not with the Canadian human trafficking hotline, but with the US hotline is being on hold for 30 minutes and still waiting for somebody to answer on the other end to the point where you finally eventually give up.
Okay, thank you. And I know that you mentioned you worked with Tamia as well, who has a lot of recommendations. And so I'm wondering, through your work in this area, if you can, recommend anything for our government that could help women safely exit prostitution or sex work if they're in a situation where they don't necessarily know that they've been trafficked or in situations where they have been. Is there something that the government can do to make it easier for women to get the help that they need?
Well, we can start off with making sure that they have housing, that they have some place to go, and that the proper supports are in place for them. I think we need to help them slowly get back into society. Most of them need counseling and based on their culture and their beliefs. So that's important. I often hear from survivors, I do talk to quite a few of them, that their criminal records that follow them really makes it hard for them to have a career. And I can tell you that in conversations I've had with the Solicitor General's office in Ontario, is the question I always ask them is, they were a victim and they went to jail, and now we're going to continue to victimize them the rest of their lives by having that criminal record follow them. So I really think that that's really something that the federal government needs to look at is, what can we do to change that? What can we do to give them the actual clean slate that they deserve that they don't currently get?
Thank you. I appreciate your being here and your response and the work that you do in this area. Statistics Canada, I would like to ask you a question. I'm not sure if you have any stats with you about sentencing and about how long people who have been accused of and then tried and found guilty of sex trafficking. If you have any statistics about how long sentences are, because we've heard quite a few of our witnesses talk about how the fact that they're not necessarily long enough. But I also know that there's a range and that the maximum sentence is a life sentence and the minimum sentence is less. So I'm wondering, what you can tell me about that, if there's anything you have.
Hi, that's a great question. I don't have those numbers right in front of me, but What we know from the data is a lot of the police reported human trafficking incidents never even make it to court to start with. They are very complex and difficult to prosecute. Those that make it, only a very few get a sentence of guilty. But what we can do is find out what are the sentencing outcomes. But from a bigger picture, very few make it to court and very few get sentenced, a sentence of guilt.
Thank you. So that's obviously a problem in itself.
Very much so.
But for the stats that you do have on that within your department, if you can send those to the committee so that we have access to them.
Yes, I will definitely. Thank you.
Thank you. I think, Karen, how much time do I have left?
45. 45 seconds.
Okay. I don't think there's much I can ask in 45 seconds to get a good enough response. So I want to thank you guys, and I'll see the rest of my time. Thanks.
Thank you very much. We're now going to pass it over to Adrian, who will probably say, let me take that time. So Adrian, you go ahead. You got 2.5 minutes. Don't worry. It's a good thing. It's a good thing.
Okay. Thanks. Merci, Madame la Présidente.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I would like to thank the witnesses for being with us today to talk about this important topic. We're realizing that we don't have a lot of statistics. It was just stated. We feel like we're only seeing the tip of the iceberg because it's difficult for people to report. In the past weeks, we heard from different witnesses and representatives from the government departments that are responsible for human trafficking. And many witnesses stated that we don't have enough data, and this was repeated by Ms. Leonard. This is concerning because the federal government implemented various policies to put an end to human trafficking, including an action plan in 2019. But in order to know if the plan is working, it's difficult without data. Ms. Leonard, I would like you to talk about the difficulty in collecting data.
Oui, ben écoute, comme on a mentionné.
As we mentioned, as a national statistics agency, we work with police agencies, and it was already noted that there's a lack of standards, a lack of communication of information, a lack of reporting, and so we are already committing to certain work with the hotline, for example. But what we would like to work on is better standards that we could work on with the Canadian Association of Chiefs of Police so that there are mechanisms that better share information on people who are a part of of human trafficking. It was mentioned to have a national database. We're not as interested in a police investigation per se. It's more our role to work on a standard and to work with police agencies. We, for example, work with missing and murdered Indigenous women and girls, and so we worked on the National Action Plan. In 2021, we announced the work that we were doing with the Canadian Association of Chiefs of Police to create a database in order to improve standards, protocols, and systems. And all of this will create a database that will allow us to have better information on the phenomenon, but it could also improve a police investigation by having protocols and IT systems that are improved. And we are committed to doing this work, and we will continue to do so. Kathy, I don't know if you had anything to add.
Also add the big concern is victims who never report to the police. Their first step is seeing a victim services agency. Those people are the first stop, the front line. And from a victim-centric approach, a trauma-enhanced approach, they want to meet the needs of the victim, and it's not to report to police. And that's a data point we don't have. We've worked with victim services in the past. They are underfunded. They would love to collect data, but they don't have those resources. So if we wanted to really have a full understanding of the magnitude and the number of victims of human trafficking, it's the frontline workers, the victim services. However, their money is always going to find shelter and supporting the needs of the victim. So they are not data collectors. So there's always that balancing act we have to consider.
C'est intéressant.
It's interesting because, and you mentioned Indigenous women and girls, and I'll state it again, tomorrow is the Red Dress Day, May 5th, and we have to reflect on why Indigenous women and girls are over-impacted by many things, whether it be resource extraction, domestic violence, or other issues. And so we'll have to reflect on this tomorrow. We also need to talk about trust in the system and not have to worry about being re-victimized or being afraid of reprisal. I'll come back to the statistics that 54% of cases were not closed. And when we're talking about human trafficking, there are many cases that are not appropriately classified. Can we explain the difference between human trafficking and other cases of violence in general? And why is it so difficult to identify the perpetrators? What should we implement in order to better detect them?
So we're right at that 6-minute point. What I'm going to do is I'm going to add a little bit of extra time on to the next round for you there, Adrian. We'll pick up some of that time, but I'm going to pass it over right now over to Lindsay, and then we'll add that. Lindsay, 6 minutes.
Thank you, Madam Chair, and thank you to the witnesses again for you being here. I did want to ask Ms. Walker, so I'm very excited to, I'll see you actually in person, I think next week. I represent London Fanshawe, and your organization, the Women's Trucking Federation, is coming to London. I was hoping that you could maybe talk about, you were talking about we've been discussing the hubs, the increase that we've seen in terms of sets coming out of Ontario, and Madam Chair, you'll well know that London itself is becoming a hub in terms of that 401 corridor. I was hoping, Ms. Walker, that you could talk specifically about that and what you're seeing in those trends along that corridor.
We are seeing an uptick in the actual truck stops themselves. And we're talking with different victim service agencies as well as local police. They're telling us that the increase in human trafficking in the London area is quite high. So we reached out to one of our corporate members, and we asked him about wrapping a 53-foot trailer that will spread the human trafficking message. Part of what that trailer does, it depicts an image on the side of the trailer. It has a 1-800 number for the Canadian Centre to End Human Trafficking. It also has a link to the No Human Trafficking website that is currently being updated all the time with new resources and services for survivors.
Thank you. In terms, and I'm very happy to see you all. I know that Ms. Talon was supposed to be here with us today. But Ms. Walker, could you talk about, because she and her organization, Courage for Freedom, had started really focusing on a lot of those en routes, those service centers along the 401 in terms of trying to educate the workers that visit that center, but of course people who are traveling, who are using those en routes, and certainly your organization, the people in your group use that quite a lot. So could you talk about, are you working together with those organizations? What are you seeing, I think, come from the efforts? Are you joining efforts on that front?
We're working with a lot of different agencies. Unfortunately, I don't do a lot of stuff with Kelly. We've had a couple conversations, but we don't always just seem to hook up at the right time. The en route centers is something that I think we all have been targeting to do more on the human trafficking sphere. What we're finding with the en routes is that in one conversation we had, it was, oh, we can't put anything up in here about that. It'll scare our customers away. So that's an issue. Making businesses aware that, they do have a responsibility to everyone. That includes every person that comes into their space. And I think, if we monitor the type of signage or posters that are put up or videos that are up there, so that we don't do anything that's going to be traumatic to anyone or set up a trauma trigger, I think that we could do a lot more in those areas. It's kind of like not in my city now at the airports and the signage that is up. I think, more public spaces that have the traffic flow coming in and out of them should be doing something.
And in terms of supports from government in relation to some of these programs that you've both run yourself, of course, and that you've seen be effective, where's the major holes that you see, both provincially, I think, but also federally, of course, as we're discussing what the federal government can do today?
I think everything boils down to funding. And I like to say that, I sit back and I talk to a lot of different organizations, whether they're in the trucking industry or a lot of the HT groups. And I'm constantly hearing the same thing, that the funding is never enough. They run out of funding, or it seems that the same organizations are constantly getting funding. And the other ones that have so much knowledge and experience are totally getting left out in the cold. You take Timmy Inagi, for instance, who in all of her years of being in operation has never received government funding once. I mean, if you've ever sat down and looked at what the government asks out of an organization to fill out on a government proposal just to apply for funding, it's mind-boggling. It really is. And I think we really need to do stuff to cut the red tape, change how the grant system and the funding programs are run, and bring it down to a little bit more. I like to say, bring it back to reality.
In terms of when I was last on this committee, there were a lot of conversations about the difference between funding for programs and then core operational funding. So that's that long-term funding, allowing these organizations to not just service one specific program with a specific target, but they had the opportunity to look into a long-term and plan many years into the future. That would go for women's shelters, for programs that are defeating or working against violence against women. Would you agree with that overall?
Yes, I really think that needs to be done. I mean, it needs to be broken up a little bit. I can tell you that everything that we do in the human trafficking sphere is funded by ourselves. The very first trailer that was wrapped and put on the road, I paid for out of my own pocket, because I believe that the trailer would make a difference.
Thank you so much. I'm now going to start our second round. It's 5 minutes, 5 minutes, 2.5, 2.5. I'm going to start it with I'm going to start it with Anna Roberts. Back to Anna. Anna, you've got the floor for 5.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I'm going to go back to something that you said earlier, Ms. Walker. Reading Tamia's book, one of the things that I was quite surprised about is that she's helped over 300 victims. And one of the things that she mentions in the book, working with the Peel Police, which we were very fortunate to visit during our time in our tour, it's a very successful program. And one of the things that she says in her book is, and this might be something that we need to use for our truckers, is that she always carries what she calls a safe bag. I think that's what she refers it to. Don't quote me on it. And what it is when she meets with these victims, she doesn't start asking questions right away. Because of the fact that she was a victim herself, she brings a care package so that the victims are not re-victimized. so that she brings them hand cream, she'll bring them a toothbrush, she'll bring them, essentials that they may not have had to use for a while. So she does this by sharing some of her experiences and building the confidence. Would you say with the training for truckers that would be something that would be helpful for them to understand?
I think some of that training will, but you have to understand we don't have a lot of room to carry a safe bag. And if I'm a driver that crosses border, some things are restricted on the U.S. So, we have to really look at everything. I think more education and awareness is what's needed in the trucking industry to help improve things. It'll make a difference.
If we are going to train the truckers to identify, individuals that are human trafficked, what is it that they do when they do identify someone? Do they call the police? How do they deal with it?
Well, I can tell you, Tumi Inegi is the one that designed our online training course for professional drivers. And one of the main things she stresses is that if they see somebody in imminent danger, they're to call 911. After that, it's the Canadian Centre to End Human Trafficking.
Okay, so thank you for that. I'm going to ask a question. I believe it's for Stats Canada. Kelly, is it? Kathy, sorry. So the statement that you made in 2019, the feds put out an action plan, but it is difficult to collect the information. How can we, as a team, make recommendations if we don't hear what the victims have explained once they are arrested? We could learn ourselves to put recommendations into the report. How can we get that information?
That's a great question. The data that we use are coming from police-reported information management systems. So if I look at the trend data from 2011 to 2017, there was year-over-year increases in the number of police-reported incidents. 2018, 2019, really high numbers. And in 2020 and 21, it kind of flatlined. But to get the narrative, the story, the experiences from survivors, that would have been a qualitative study. And there are some very good qualitative research where they've done one-on-one interviews with survivors of human trafficking. From a statistical perspective, though, what we always have to grapple with and what we are asked often is, what is the overall prevalence? Like, how big is that problem? And when we have victims that are scared for their life, that they're concerned about their family, their friends, about being abused, if they go to the police, capturing the data from the police will always be just the tip of the iceberg. So any agency or victim service that is capturing information could help us understand the bigger picture. But as Ms. Walker said, funding for victim services is all over the map. Do they have the resources and the manpower to collect some information? And then from a comparability perspective, with so many frontline services available, how do you harvest all that information to give us the big picture? So from Statistics Canada's perspective, we rely on the police reported data. We get data from some shelters. We're working now with the Canadian Hotline to look at their data so it can make a nicer picture.
Can you get that data to us? Is that possible?
I can send you the information about the shelters.
Yeah, what we'll do is we'll make a list for you, Kathy, because I'm sure there'll be a few things that we want to get on there. I'm going to pass it now over to Anita for 5 minutes.
And thank you, Madam Chair, and thank you so much for our witnesses. I'd like to first ask questions of Stats Can and pick up on some of the previous questions about how you get your data, where you find it. But we've been talking about how do we find the numbers, the data. But what about the disaggregated data? So, for instance, amongst the X number of women and girls that we know are trafficked, how many of them are newcomers? What are the ages? What are their backgrounds? Where are they? Because I'm just wondering, is there an ability to be able to get that kind of data?
That's a critical question. What we can release at the moment is age and sex. We are unable to release ethnicity, which is a huge gap. However, currently Statistics Canada, working in association with the Canadian Association of Chiefs of Police, we will start collecting ethnicity data. So that will fill a key gap. Thinking about cross borders, are there Indigenous women? We'll be able to capture that information moving forward. Immigrant status, we don't have, but we have the ability to link our police reported data to other data sets within Statistics Canada. And we're hopeful in the coming years we'll be able to get a sense of whether someone's a new immigrant or their status. But that's something we will be working on.
Good, because so much of what we heard in our study is that Indigenous women and girls are overrepresented, that the foreign students are being recruited. So I think that would be quite key to be able to get that. And then related to that, you just mentioned that the police are providing you with some of this. How well are you able to gather data from provinces, from police services, from what are your sources, and are there any areas where you're having difficulty getting data that might have been collected?
So through our Uniform Crime Reporting Survey, we extract information from more than 600 police services across Canada. We get the data in a consistent manner. It's high quality. The challenge that we currently have is anecdotally, we know some police services who are taking a trauma-informed approach in dealing with human trafficking victims may not categorize the incident as human trafficking because the victim doesn't want to press charges and the police are following their lead. Secondary, they might be informed by the Crown that you need to charge something else in order to get this case moving through the system. So some of these little instances are happening, and therefore we are having additional conversations with some police services currently to say, could we be coding it some way? How can we capture some of the information that you are gathering? We know you're doing good work with some victims, but we're not getting all that information. So some of those conversations are ongoing. And if there are opportunities to exploit data from these agencies, we will try and resolve it.
And I imagine that confidentiality and privacy are probably a real concern there. And we've heard the same thing, that very often the police will charge on the drugs that they find there, or on other offenses, or, not necessarily the trafficking offense. And also, one of the things we've heard is trafficking is so much more than the criminality. It's a continuum. And so coercion and things like that wouldn't necessarily meet that criminal threshold. Is there a way to collect any of that kind of data?
Again, understanding the police officers are trying to gain the trust of victims, and their priority is to safeguard that victim. And so they have to gain that trust. So if the victim is reluctant to share information about the perpetrator, is feeling threatened, then the priority is to find housing. And as Mr. Flynn, the previous witness, said, it might be a week, a month later, or the individual may never press a charge. They just want to find a safe place. So
yeah. But online, we've heard a lot about online grooming and online. Is there any way to collect data on what is happening online, where these young girls are being groomed, are being exploited?
Currently, within our systems, we do have a flag that will indicate whether a computer was used in the perpetration of this violent offense. We haven't looked at it yet for human trafficking. My concern would be maybe the luring part would start, but once the individual or the young child was being trafficked, then it would be the contact would have been made. But it's something we're going to explore.
Perfect. Thank you so much. We're now going to pass it back over to Adrienne LaRoche. Adrienne?
Merci beaucoup, Madame la Présidente.
Thank you very much, Madam Chair. Thank you, Ms. Léonard and Ms. Aucoin, for being with us. At the end of my first turn, I had asked a question if you could answer in under a minute, because I would have a question for our other witness. So what could we implement according to the data that you have in order to better detect cases? Because there is a difference between cases that are reported in human trafficking and other types of violence. So in under a minute, please.
Nous, comme on disait, ça serait...
As we stated, it would be to work with all police services and have a formal commitment to creating a national database. This would create standards, processes, and information systems that we would be able to use to share information between the different jurisdictions in the country. This would allow us to create standards for investigations, but also people or cases would be better reported and better investigated. Police officers have improved non-classified cases of sexual assault thanks to similar efforts. So, yes, these are things that would help. Thank you very much, Ms. Léonard. Ms. Walker, I met with your federation in Winnipeg. We had 2 days at the Human Rights Museum, and the topic was human trafficking, and the organization was there as a partner in the event. And what do you remember from those 2 days? What discussions did you have, and what suggestions did you leave there with? And your service is exceptional, and I was very happy to find out about it in Winnipeg.
I think I was very shocked that, it was a same type of conference with same big corporations discussing the same things that we all know about. I would have liked to seen some more workshops or working groups to actually come up with solutions. I'm a big believer, and I would rather sit there and listen to a survivor than I am somebody that is from a large corporation that is only there to better themselves. So that I walked away a little bit disappointed in that event. I was hoping that there would have been more discussion than what there was.
Thanks so much, Shelley. I'm now going to pass it over to Lindsay. Lindsay, 2.5 minutes.
Yes, so I'd like to ask this of the StatsCan witnesses. I've been trying to put forward, and certainly within our provincial government, there's a law, Bill 99, that they're trying to get through the legislature. And ultimately, this would help survivors who are trying to rebuild their lives to get out from under debt that has been collected from human traffickers, from those witnesses. And I was wondering if you collect any data or have any information, because we're looking at a way to do this federally as well, and have some legislation federally. But it says, one of the groups that's been working on this project, Recover, says that the federal and provincial governments also get a cut of the debt incurred by human traffickers because of their collection of HST. Do you have any information on that? Or do you collect any information around that debt incurrence and what happens to it?
Mm-hmm. Statistics Canada does have data on HST that's collected from legal businesses. So if one knew the entities and its nefarious criminal activity, we would have no way of being able to determine that. When we collect data about HST that's paid or not, it gets aggregated into large data points that are released at the provincial level rather than individual entities. So and through our justice data, that information is not collected.
So, because I am looking at data and it says that about $14,000 per year at least. So how would that data have been collected if StatsCan isn't looking at that?
Probably
or that's not officially collected?
FinTrack.
Okay.
I suspect FinTrack is collecting it because they are focusing their investigative efforts on people that are doing criminal activity, and they are following financial transactions and are able to calculate it. I believe that's where you're getting those data points from.
Okay. So so the government, is it possible then, I guess, the federal government would have to look at those services and could rely upon those FinTrack services in order to get the data, in order to better inform what kind of legislation that they would need to put forward, or?
I couldn't comment. I know that FinTrack has done some great work at tracking human trafficking people, how they spend their money, following their transactions, and have come up with some great studies. But I couldn't get into the details.
Yeah. Okay. Well, fair enough. Perhaps I could recommend, if they're not already a part of the list of witnesses, that maybe some of that information be submitted to.
Fantastic idea.
All right.
Okay. All right. This is the way we work in London. We just look and go, okay, I got it. All right. So I would like to thank, on behalf of the committee, I would really like to thank the witnesses for coming forward and providing this important information. Just a couple of notes for our committee members. I'm going to remind you for our study that will be starting in June on menstrual equity. We've pushed the request for witnesses back to the 12th. So if everybody could have them in, the witnesses with their names, their contact information is required. She's making me contact information. If we can get that in by noon on next Friday. Secondly, I would like to say that the Minister for Women and Gender Equality and Youth, she has accepted our invitation and will be studying the main estimates on Thursday, May the 18th for the first hour. Seeing no other questions or comments, it looks like we are time to go. So today's meeting is suspended. What? Okay. So for the next Oh, okay, perfect.